Windows has an update, Xbox has some news, and there's some tech you shouldn't buy. It's a bit hard to believe that May, well, it's already over. And so there's going to be a lot to, I think, play with in June, if you will. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. But first, the tech news. So Microsoft released their spring update, their May update, sometimes called a March update, whatever you want to call it. The Windows 10 update they release every spring now is technically available if you qualify. So I say qualify because there's a lot of blockers. If you have certain NVIDIA GPUs, if your laptop faces the east, you may not be getting this update. And it's what's really weird about this is that Microsoft's own hardware, some of their Surface lineup, is not actually eligible to get this. And we're not talking like a Surface Pro 3, we're talking like Surface Pro 7. Some of their latest generation stuff does not qualify, and you have to wait a little bit longer, which kind of just, it feels odd that Microsoft is the owner of the hardware and the owner of the OS, and that they can't get it all together to get that stuff shipping. My guess is that there's some driver issues that they're waiting on third-party dependencies, and that those third parties were not able to get this stuff done in time, and that's why the blocker's there. Anyways, if you go to settings and search, and what Microsoft calls a seeker, you may be able to install it, but if you don't see it, then you more than likely have a blocker in your machine, which means don't try to sideload it, because then you're going to end up probably with a bad situation. Microsoft is also enabling spell check, the Windows spell check, for all of Chrome browsers. So if you have been like living on that or whatever, I still recommend Grammarly. I think they're the best third-party plugin. It's much better than Microsoft's editor plugin right now for third-party, spell checking and all that good stuff. So use that. There's also a new Cortana experience. If you still use Cortana in Windows 10, that is now generally available. I was going to say widely available. And Microsoft is also claiming that they are still investing in Skype. Well, this came from Mr. Jeff Teeper, and I believe this is more of like, hey, we can't just say we're giving up on Skype, because then people will flock away. What I fundamentally believe Microsoft is doing, we already know that they're releasing Teams for Life or Teams for Consumer this summer, is that Skype will eventually just kind of melt into it. Initially, they'll probably have some sort of prompt inside of Skype that says, hey, try out the new Teams for Consumer. It's the best of Skype plus more. And then they'll just eventually kind of morph it into that product. And we'll say so long Teams, but technically speaking, Microsoft is still investing in Teams. But what does that even mean? Like if you're paying an engineer to work and maintain the platform, that's investing in it. So like I wouldn't read into that any more than you have to. And so it was a holiday week here in the US, and there's not a ton to talk about other than Microsoft releasing some of that stuff. But which brought up another good point. As we head here into like the May and summertime regions of the world, like I was about to say for everywhere, but if you're in the southern hemisphere, you're entering into the winters. Thinking about technology, because I've got a Surface Book 3 right here, which I review will be going up today on Petri.com. The video review more than likely next week. We've got the Stream Deck and all that stuff. And somebody asked, Brad, is there any technology right now that you would not buy? And there absolutely is. First off, I would not buy a TV. If you're going to buy a TV right now, do not buy one unless it has HDMI 2.1. That is the next sort of generation. And if you're going to buy an Xbox Series X, you definitely want a TV with HDMI 2.1. Now, granted, that's going to ratchet up the price a little bit. If you need just a basic TV and you're not planning to do any gaming on it and you're not going to keep it for a long time, then you're probably okay. But I would not buy a TV without HDMI 2.1. So just keep on the lookout for that. The other thing I would not buy right now is a Wi-Fi router. I would absolutely hold off on that, especially here in the US. They just released, or unlocked, I should say, the 6 gigahertz spectrum here in the US. And so what that's going to allow is for a lot more bandwidth in your home connectivity, but those routers are not quite available. Qualcomm just announced that they are shipping some of these chips, like the first batch, and so wait until routers start having that. I don't know if they're going to call it tri-band or what they're going to call it quite yet. I'm sure they'll have some fancy name marketing for it. I know you could say, hey, it might be called Wi-Fi 6, but Wi-Fi 6 I think it's actually might be called Wi-Fi 6E potentially. Doesn't matter what it's called. I don't know the name off the top of my head. Do not buy a router until that feature is widely available. And the first generation products are going to be expensive. But unless you like absolutely need one right now, I would hold off buying a router until that functionality is available. Otherwise, you're going to buy one and then you're going to want to re-upgrade here in the near future. And why waste those dollars? The other thing I would not buy right now is a headset for your Xbox. We don't know the story yet on the Series X. Now, Microsoft keeps saying, hey, all your old peripherals are going to work with the new stuff and all that. We've seen some USB dongle news floating around. I would not buy a headset for my Xbox right now unless I absolutely needed it. And even if I had to, I would probably go out and buy one of the cheaper options until Microsoft makes it explicitly clear how headsets from past generations are going to work on the new stuff and what the new stuff is going to support. Because if you're going to spend money, a couple $100 on a headset, you're going to want it to work on the next generation. And quite frankly, Microsoft hasn't been clear yet about how that is going to function. So I would not buy a headset right now for your Xbox. The other thing I would not buy is a MacBook Pro or any Mac with a keyboard that is on sale. Because why? Apple is still probably, they're trying to offload all of those old terrible keyboards that they had that if you got a little speck of dust under there, they would break. Do not buy a Mac laptop that is on sale unless it is of the current generation, which you're probably not going to find on sale. So all the sale items are going to be that old crappy keyboard, and you're going to be like, oh, that looks like such a good deal for MacBook Pro, but you're going to be suffering with a horrific keyboard for the longevity of that product, and you are at the whims of the dust bunnies about ruining your keyboard. So there's just a couple things. I know there's probably some more stuff out there. People will say, well, what about cell phones? Should you buy a cell phone? Well, it depends, because if you're going to buy an iPhone Pro, I don't know if I would recommend buying one right now because you're probably like 3-4 months away from a refresh, maybe somewhere around there. And I wouldn't buy it definitely at MSRP. Now on the Android side, you might be able to get a really good deal on a higher end phone. But again, that is such a personal choice, unlike a TV with HDMI 2.1. So just keep that in mind. If you need a cell phone now, you obviously go buy one because that's a pretty critical part of most people's daily lives. But you're going to be buying at probably pretty close to the cusp of refresh. So you're only going to get 3 months of the best of the best experience or all that good stuff. So on to the gaming news. Microsoft revealed the Xbox Series X backwards compatibility story this week. I did a video on it yesterday, but the TLDR is that Microsoft is going to take your old games, add some HDR magic, make them look better. It's also going to add some performance magic, and games that were running at 30 frames per second are now going to run at 60 frames per second. Games that were running at 60 FPS through backwards compat are now going to run at 120. All they're doing is taking that massive back catalog they have, and as long as the game qualifies for all the bells and whistles, it will get a massive visual fidelity upgrade and will just look that much better on your next generation console. Really hard to fault Microsoft. That is always something they are good at doing. Microsoft has also released their family Xbox app settings, so it makes it easier to control your family settings on your Xbox through an app. That's actually quite a convenient thing. One of the challenges is actually working with multi-accounts on your Xbox. So I'm hoping that this experience will make controlling that for your kids just a little bit better. Minecraft Dungeons, a fun game. Think of it as like Diablo if you're familiar with that, but Minecrafty. It's a good game. And then so what's going to happen in June? Well, Microsoft is gearing up, I believe, for an event. We already know Sony is going to be having a pretty big event, potentially as early as next week. Don't officially quote me on this, but I believe xCloud for the PC might be dropping in June. They're getting very close. I've seen some milestone information that makes me think that it's going to drop in June, but I haven't seen the explicit announcement that they're going to drop it in June. But it's getting very, very, very close. Speaking of xCloud, Microsoft did add some more games to Android xCloud over the week, but they have not added any more to iOS yet, which I wonder what the reasoning for that is. Obviously, there's something going on because Microsoft wouldn't artificially hold that stuff back, but they absolutely are holding it back right now. So be on the lookout for June. I think it's going to be a good month. I think it's going to be a good month for gamers. So on to the questions du jour. Realizer, something says, hi Brad, have they started producing the Xbox Series X? Yes, they have. And when do you think Microsoft will start selling the Xbox Series X? I think they will start selling it sometime in the fall. October is usually a good timeline. October, November, sometime around there is where my sort of expectation is at this point. At one point they were actually, I know, officially targeting September, but I'm guessing with everything that is going on right now in the world, or has been going on in the world, that ambitious goal is not going to be happening. So Andrea says, hi Brad, let me thank you in advance for your great work. I really appreciate enjoying your Q&A section. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Very much appreciate that. You talked about the possibility of getting Windows 10X preview builds around build, but nobody mentioned 10X at all, and everything went quiet ever since. You are absolutely right. Now, I know for a fact that Microsoft was preparing a Windows 10X build that they were looking to potentially release publicly. I'm positive on this. And it obviously has not materialized quite yet. We don't quite know the full story. We know that Microsoft, I believe, actually scrubbed some 10X stuff from build. And so you got to remember that Panos is in control now and things have shifted hands. And so all of that stuff about build, releasing it, all that very much likely fell on his desk, and he made a go, no-go decision. And clearly it was a no-go so far. And so here we are. You got to remember that 10x narrative about switching from dual screens to single screens came out pretty late, right? Not like 2 weeks before build. And so I think this is all tied into what is going on there. And hopefully we'll get some more hands-on experience here in the near future. But then he goes on to say, now I've seen John Wink, he's an engineer working on Windows Text, posting about testing in production fun times. And so I don't quite know what he is explicitly talking about there. I have a few guesses, but I'm not quite sure exactly. And he says, what's your take on all this? Any updates, timeframe, scooch, or hunch regarding Windows 10X preview builds? I still expect Microsoft will release a Windows 10X preview build. I just don't know the exact timeline. These things are clearly very fluid at the moment. Mad Dinus says, so I got the code names wrong last week. Is Lockhart still a thing? Yes, Lockhart is still a thing. Any clear picture of where it is being pitched to sit in the ecosystem? So I'm hoping we're going to learn more about Lockhart like this month, potentially. I don't quite know yet, but I'm hoping we will learn more about it. The whole goal here is that Microsoft needs a 2 SKU model. And people are going to say, but Brad, 2 SKUs of the next generation Xbox is going to be crazy. Guys, there's already 3 SKUs of the current Xbox One. And if you don't believe me, we have the Xbox All Digital, we have the Xbox One S, and we have the Xbox One X. Microsoft launching a multi-SKU system is going to be pretty much the norm. But you could say, but Brad, they have different performance targets for the Lockhart and the Anaconda. That is crazy. Xbox One X is way more powerful than the Xbox One S. This is a continuation of that narrative. So where is this going to fit? It's going to be, look, you have the Xbox One X at the extreme end of performance capabilities, HDR, ray tracing magic, and then you have the Xbox Series S at the middle ground, like that lower entry level, lower price, lower performance, 1080p or potentially 1440p target. So there you go. That's where I honestly think that it's going to fit in. He says, my concern is that the Unreal 5 demo only ran at 30 frames per second at 1440p, and that is on the PS5 with full power. So does a cut down on the Xbox Series X make even sense then, even for 1080p? Here's the massive caveat. We don't know realistically how that Unreal Engine demo was running. Yes, they were talking about the PS5 version. I would not put all the eggs in the basket of that's what they said on this day. That is the absolute fact for everything. So just keep that in mind. Daryl says, as I recall, you got a Surface Book 3 a week or 2 early. I did. It's right here. Are you going to be doing a review, or is it Paul? No, it's definitely me. Or did I miss it? No, you haven't missed it. My review for this is actually going to go live today. Now, the video will more than likely be next week. The reason why I didn't just run it out the doors is because I wanted to use it. Like, I've been using this thing every day. And typically with a review, I like to travel, but obviously, travel's not doing it. So I had to find more creative ways to try to use this thing as a real workstation. And so there we go. He says, my Surface Book 2 is getting long in the tooth, so I did receive my Surface Book 3 early last week, and is definitely cooler, literally and perhaps figuratively, than the SB2. Would be very warm on the bottom. The SB3 is not so much, only a bit warm, but the 128.7 amp charger comes with it. Charger is downright toasty. Yeah, so this is a great machine. If you like the Surface Book 2, you'll like the Surface Book 3. That's kind of the short version of the review. Brother Nod says, has the lack of in-person events made it harder to get scoops? Yeah, I mean, it definitely has, because and scoops is, you kind of got to put that into perspective here, because what's great about events, especially like Build and Ignite, is that there's a lot of Microsoft execs there, and we go hang out with them, like we'll legitimately go drink beer, and just understanding where they're coming from helps to connect the dots, because a lot of scoops that get published from myself and many others aren't necessarily like, hey, Xbox Series X is launching, whatever, we'll make up a date on Thanksgiving, or Surface Book 3 has X specs in it. A lot of it is connecting the dots of what is management looking for, where is engineering doing, and bringing all this stuff together in a post. It's not always clear cut. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. And so what's great about these events is being able to sit down and talk to the engineers and the leaders of these departments and understanding their vision and where they're going, off the record, of course, because they won't let us write all that. And sometimes it's honestly just, even away from PR people, it makes it a lot easier to understand the future of each individual product line. That is the value of this stuff. It's not necessarily the news that comes out is always great, don't get me wrong, but it's the side conversations where real sort of insights are better understood, because PR will have a way of putting a very strict line on what you can and cannot say, and it doesn't always explain the full narrative. and being able to talk to people sort of behind the scenes, off the record, helps explain that narrative and helps us write more thoughtful pieces. Now, we did get a little bit of that at Build, but it's not nearly the same in depth, because one of the things Microsoft does at Build every year is they always have a cocktail with the press and pretty much not the entire C-suite, but like a ton of corporate vice presidents and above show up. And so those are the events where you truly get the most value out of going to a conference. He says, what is your next major home project? If my wife had any way with it, it'd be me putting in a pool, but I don't think we're doing that. So JTD Wob says, what is your best guess for when Lockhart Series S will be announced this summer, along with the main Series X, late fall or early next year? I think we'll get it. Hopefully, I'm hoping that we hear about it this year. That is my hope. That is my personal hope. TD Merce says, any idea when Credge will come to Xbox? The current Edge browser is very poor, especially when it comes to the site medias. My guess would be, if anything, it would be with the next generation Xbox, but Microsoft, when I asked them about it explicitly, they said they would no comment. I'm assuming it will come eventually, but I would imagine that Microsoft has the actual data about how many people use the browser on the Xbox, and they're saying, hey, look, that's pretty dang low. We're not going to make that a big engineering effort. NGC says, will we hear more about the Surface Duo next week? What are you hearing? I haven't heard anything explicitly about next week. All I know about the Surface Duo right now is that it is pretty much ready to launch. They have, I believe it was a June 1st internal deadline. And so we should be hearing about it. It's effectively ready to go. So I don't know where they truly are in the manufacturing run up for it, but I would imagine it's fairly far along, considering how many people we have seen with it inside the Microsoft org showing it off on social media. And those do not look like engineering prototypes. So it looks like it's pretty close to being able to get out the door, and hopefully we will hear more soon. Sidechoker says, I have a ZTE Axum M dual screen phone and I love it. My question is, do you know if the Duo will be able to mirror the screen so that you have the same stuff on each screen? For example, a phone in tent mode and watch YouTube on each side. It would surprise me if you couldn't. I don't explicitly know. You could probably pull up the emulator and figure out if you can. I haven't seen anybody try to do like a full dual screen, span the display across, except with the exception for maps. I have seen maps like that, but email is typically like you have like you have like the list pane and the reading pane. Typically that's the model Microsoft is doing, is having one app, but two different pieces of content inside the app open for the most part. So we will have to see. When the Surface Travel dongles, when will the Surface Travel dongle be released, and will it come to Europe? I don't know if it's coming to Europe, but it would be surprising me if it doesn't. He's referring to the Surface Travel Hub that Microsoft announced. I believe it was targeted for the end of this month. I haven't heard explicitly if it's out yet, but I believe the target was for the end of this month. Do you know anything new about the password manager from Microsoft? No, all we know is that it's in that Teams consumer app, but Microsoft is very, very quiet for it at that. They're just very quiet. They haven't said anything. I've been trying to get a list of all the features that they are going to launch and when, and Microsoft keeps saying, well, we don't have any more information to share. So this summer is all we got, unfortunately. And he says, I am in the beta for xCloud and I can't use it because it's not available in Luxembourg. I am in the German beta, so I understand that I can use it because of the other country, but why can't I use the xCloud with my Xbox One X? When I check for the stream, all I get is a green check mark, but I can't connect with my phone and all that good stuff. It doesn't work on Wi-Fi or mobile data. I just get the error and connect. Maybe that's why it's not available in Luxembourg. I don't quite know what sort of geo restrictions and how Microsoft is actually isolating that data, but that it could just be that you're trying to work around the xCloud restrictions, and that Microsoft is trying to probably actively stop you from doing that, would be my guess. And for the last one, sometimes I can't stream my Xbox One to my PC with the companion app. My PC is hardwired and my Xbox is, so they are on the same network. I tried the beta version, but it doesn't work, and I couldn't find something online. So this is very hard to triage remotely. The only thing that I could think of is that make sure you're authenticated with the same accounts on both console and the PC. I would probably expect that you are, but that would be my first thing to check. And the other thing to check, it's a beta and maybe it's just not compatible with the hardware that you have. It's really hard to triage individual things like that through a web form in this capacity. Dr. Vandrell. Hi, Brad. When the heck are we going to see Project X Cloud for PC? Thanks. My expectation is that hopefully this month meaning June, sorry, June, because it's technically still May. So we will have to wait and see, but I believe it might be coming next month. But again, things are shuffling about. It's also Microsoft's fiscal year end is June 30th. So we're going to see a lot of things sort of get shoved out the door before the year ends here. So with all that, guys, thanks for the Q&A. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the month of May, and we'll catch you all right back here in June.